Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube as Speaking Podcast. You can find my other episodes, the Awakening Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, the Meditation Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast. All can be found on roycollin.com. Today, my guest, please welcome Sandeep Nath.
Hi there. Wow, that was kind of start.
Yeah, you're shocked with my podcasts, all my podcasts.
Multiplicity of the stuff, man. You catering to everybody in the world. Awesome, Ryan. Love to be here. Love it.
Brilliant. So I always like my guests to introduce themselves to the audience. So you might let them know who's Sandeep.
Okay. Well, hello, guys and girls. And this is Sandeep Nath saying hello all the way from India. Now, I have been in India since I was born here, but I've had the good fortune of traveling across the world and even giving talks and conducting workshops across 4 continents. How did this all come about? I know most of you are speakers or aspiring to be speakers, and that's why I bring this up right at the front. For me, I always had this dream of creating impact with a lot of people. And that's why I started a communications company about 20 years ago. And somewhere during the time when I was into working with the likes of, I won't take names, but large consumer product companies and business process outsourcing organizations, I started getting this feeling that we as a human race are creating more problems than we are solving. You know, the kind of stuff that we giving out in bags and expecting people to think that that stuff is healthy, and the way that we're working nights and solving petty problems with credit cards and insurance claims, which ought not to have existed if we had designed our systems better. That was the way that these large multinational companies were driving the human race, and we were doing things more or less on autopilot. Got me started on wondering, what is then the purpose, and where is this generation headed, and what is consciousness all about? And that got me started on understanding what we have known since thousands of years. Got me in touch with some Vedic gurus, some Tibetan lamas. I spent a few months in the Himalayas, in monasteries, and various oriental masters from China and Japan. And got me to understand how human consciousness works and how it relates with energy, and what that, an understanding of that, can do to help redefine our way of being individually and collectively. So that's what I started speaking on. And that's what's become a passion. It's found itself in several books, the last of which is one called Renewal, which is about the renewal of human consciousness, and something that came out last June, that's 2020. It's a very interesting book, but I'll leave that to the rest of the discussion. RENEWALism.com if we don't have much of a discussion about it, or if you still want more details. And today I'm standing at a point where I invite you all to be part of the Renewalism movement. So again, read about it at RENEWALism.com, and we get on with whatever Roy has for us today. So over to you, sir.
So before we delve into the speaking career, as a child, before you started going to these 4 continents and going to all these different countries, because I know you've been to Ireland and you've been to Poland as well, how were you as a child? Were you shy, or were you actually, standing at the front of the class?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, it's very interesting that you asked that at this point, because I was speaking at an international summit hosted by the Professional Speakers Association of India at the beginning of this year. I started 2021 that way. It happened in January. And I had, for some reason, chosen a childhood memory as the first one that I would start off with. And my talk was on 5 keys to being a speaker with authenticity. And I recalled the instance when I was 4 years old. And there was this birthday party that was happening. Now, my grandmom, she had a rule in the house. We were staying in a joint family. And the rule was that the junior most would be served first. So there was a cousin of mine who happened to have a birthday 20 days before mine, and they'd come visiting. And on the day of his birthday, everybody started giving him gifts. And that got my goat. And I complained to my grandmother. I said, this cannot be. I am younger than him. They've got to give the presents to me first. Those are your rules, not mine. And I obviously was livid. But you know what she did? God bless her heart. By that evening, when the guests actually came in, everybody came with two identical gifts, and we had two cakes, and we celebrated the birthday together. Now, why do I say that? I say that for two reasons. One, because that relates with our speaking careers. That was the day, Roy and listeners, when I understood that the basic aspect of speaking with authenticity is knowing that whatever you say gets the message across, gets the response. Because that's what you're paid to speak for if you're professional speakers. You've got to get the message across for your clients, for your event planners. And Roy, because you took me back to my childhood and that opened up this entire Pandora's box, I was the younger child for many years. And I was the bullied kid for many years because whenever this cousin of mine would come visiting, he would take advantage of his 20-day seniority. And, we weren't really great buddies. We were more of competitors. But we grew up to become great buddies and we're really, really close. And I value that friendship and camaraderie all along. But I was one who was more introspective, introvertish. And when I was a teenager, I remember a comment made by an aunt of mine, a friend of my mother, who said, this boy's words are gold. He doesn't take them out very often. I took it as a compliment anyway, and she did mean it that way. And she did clarify when we were talking about it several years later that yes, it was meant to be. But I never spoke much. And if you see even today between my wife and I, she's the one who does most of the talking. And the common joke is, and what does your husband do? Well, he's a speaker. Really? We wouldn't have believed that this way. So, so yes, I've had a fairly solitary childhood, but a very enjoyable one that allowed me to introspect, and one that found a great connection when I was up there in the Himalayas, really discovering what we are about inside, what the inner power is all about. Because I could sort of relate with that much faster than if I were gregarious and party type.
Excellent. Very interesting. And you mentioned the Speakers Association, because I know you're a member of the Speakers Association in India. How has that benefited you? And would you recommend people to get involved in something like that? And what must you meet weekly, monthly? Because I'm not involved in one of them, so you might tell me as much as you can about it.
Well, I would recommend it for sure. See, there is this Global Speaking Federation, the GSF, which has associations in 17 countries, or maybe it is 16 countries, and there's one VSAI, Virtual Speakers Association of International. So VSAI is for everybody who's not part of a speaking association in their country, because they're not part of the 16 countries, which include India, South Africa, US, UK, and various. Singapore is pretty active. But I would recommend that not only because it puts you in touch with the fraternity, which really gives you cutting edge tips on how speaking is evolving in these changing times, where we're moving from feeling the energy face to face and you work up the room to working up black boxes on a Zoom screen. And it is quite a change. And apart from just your presentation skills, it's about how you develop your topic and how you get deeper into it, how you sound it off with people who are a safe environment to bounce off these things. And so I would recommend that very highly. Uh, you could find out from GSF the site and just Google, everything is available, whether there is an association in your country, or join up the VSAI. You could connect with me. I could put you on to the right people. I'm on LinkedIn, and I would also recommend it because of the networking that happens. Now, for instance, I have friends in South Africa and Singapore and UK and the US, not because I've met them. In fact, I've had more international friendships in the speaking circle during the pandemic than before it. And it's through this. And then we speak on various stages, and now it's just one global community. There are no barriers to where we speak. It's all about refining what you speak on and making it meaningful for audiences wherever they're there to listen to you. So I think more than any other time, this is the time where we ought to be part of either the VSAI or one of the associations in your country.
Brilliant. So with the virtual world, because I mean, there's obviously an advantage. Some people like to do a lot of traveling, and I want to delve into that later, just kind of speaking in different continents and just how to adjust to that. But first, we'll talk about the virtual world, like, you know, because obviously you're connecting with people when you were on the stage before what's happened at the moment. But how have you adjusted, and have you figured out ways of connecting with your audience?
Great question. Yes, it was a steep learning curve, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of good feedback from the speaking community I was just telling you about. But there's no escaping the virtual world, even if it becomes very like before. It will still be very hybrid, and that is going to complicate matters because while uh, in the virtual world, you know, everybody's in their own spaces. In a hybrid world, some of them are talking among each other and others are in their own spaces, and you just don't know who you're addressing and what's the crosstalk. So it's that's the next step of the learning curve. But what's very important for virtual speaking is, let's see, I'm speaking right out top of my head, but one thing very important is to be looking straight into the camera. The lens is your friend. The second is knowing the space around you. Very often, we don't position ourselves in a way that listeners are comfortable taking input from us. And many times we use the camera lens attached to the laptop, and then when you change the angle of the screen to something that you're comfortable with, suddenly it appears like you would be looking at the fan or something like that. And it's disconcerting. So those are etiquettes. Those are just like you wouldn't fart or sneeze while you're giving a talk on stage. You wouldn't be mindful of these sort of things. They're just as good or bad. Pardon my expression, but you're Irish.
No, I love it. Yeah. They're the things people will remember.
I hope so. The other things is that about whether to stand or sit. That's a question that comes up very often. And I think that if you're on a fireside or on a panel, then sitting is fine. But if you're speaking, remember how you speak on stage. You don't sit and speak on stage. Only the audience sits when the speaker speaks. So do you see your self-image as an audience or as a speaker? That's a question the audience, my listening audience has to answer. But I see myself as a speaker. So I would be standing and speaking, and therefore you would have more of a full up, you'd have more, at least till waist level, and more interaction, which also gives you more energy, because waist is where we have our energy. I keep coming back to energy because that's the subject that I speak on. But when you can move your energy, when you have that flexibility, which you can have a lot more of on your feet, then you transmit. And when you transmit that energy, you make that connection. So even if people are not in the chat box, they're just watching you, they have that feeling of connectedness because of your smile, because if you're looking at them squarely, and because you have that movement, you have that the NLP kind of parameters, the audio, kinesthetic, and visual triggers that would build the bond and get them to feel that it's a conversation. In fact, that's another very important point, again related to the audio part. It has to be conversation. You cannot be doing rah rah the way you would want to on a stage to work up energy. In a virtual setting, you might need to work up energy by going low, by being conspiratorial. It's just between you and me. That's what we're talking about. You get it? That makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense to me. And does it make sense to you, Roy?
Of course, of course. And when you are standing, do you use the same mic that you have now, or would you actually get the clip-on mic to, this for the sound?
I would think the clip-on mic is better, because there are times when you move a little further away, and there are times when you move a little closer, just to make a point. And you don't want the audio levels to change radically when you do that.
Okay. And regarding, you've been to 4 continents. As I mentioned, you've been to my beautiful country in Ireland and this beautiful country, Poland, where I'm living for the last 14 years. I've seen you've been to Italy, you've been near New Zealand or in New Zealand, the USA, Mexico. You might let us know, what have you learned from obviously the same thing doesn't work everywhere. How have you adjusted, and was it through trial and error, or did the Speakers Association tip you off before you traveled?
No, in fact, that was before I joined the Speakers Association. I did most of my talking and a lot of workshops when I traveled. And it was in 2019 that I came across in fact, it was in 2019 that the Professional Speaking Association of India was established. And it was only about 2-3 months after it came into being that I became a part of it. So this was all pre-2019 or in 2019, because again, we had gone off to Europe and US in October 19, and we came back just before the pandemic started, the lockdowns. So now we've been in India for almost a year and a half, but we'd spent the time out there. And yes, first, let me tell you, everybody is exactly the same all over the world. The Irish have a better sense of humor, but we feel the same things, we want the same things, we are driven by the same things, and most of part of the same things are health, happiness, and harmony. Happiness being a big one. Nobody wants to suffer. People have different ranges of defining suffering. My wife, for instance, she would suffer if it is too hot. In India, it tends to cross 40 centigrade, and that is time to suffer. But the thing is that we all have different ranges, but we all want to be happy. But at the same time, because we have different ranges, as speakers, we have to adapt and ascertain what is the optimal or the median range of the audience. Would the mention of fart upset your listeners? And I just took a calculated risk, because, like I said, you're Irish, that it wouldn't. But if it would, or if something which is gender discriminatory would, don't broach those kind of things. And that changes from region to region, not just country to country. So one has to have a sensitivity to that. And that is why traveling to places and immersing yourself in the culture, going by metros, walking the streets, is so very important for at least 24 hours before you start speaking. That it's got to be built into your schedule. And I was just fortunate that it was built into mine, because I would travel everywhere with my wife, and we were doing these public programs. So they were open workshops, they were planned out. I have not been doing that for business houses as much as I want to now. But And I'll tell you a little in a while why I want to now. But when there were these planned workshops which were being steered by some partners, collaborators, or by us ourselves, we could plan those schedules that way. But if you're doing it with businesses also, you've got to factor in that time. Otherwise, there's no relatability, and if that's not there, we are not getting the message across. What my grandmom taught me.
Very good. And regarding workshops, because everybody's kind of got their own kind of process and way of organizing it, are you doing workshops that are like 1 hour, 3 hours, full day? And basically, how do you structure them? Like, have you got notes that's tipping you off, or are you using PowerPoint? Are you making sure people are connecting? What's your golden nuggets on the workshops?
So, great question there. The answer forming in my mind was all of the above. But for virtual sessions, now that you mentioned PowerPoints, I would not take a workshop more than 3 hours at a go. And if it has to be, it would be spread over 2 days, 3 days, as the case may be. 1 hour a day is great, but 3 hours a day is fine. We can have the appropriate breaks and breakout rooms and change the energy and stuff like that. But just getting people to sit for more than 3 hours is not right. You don't want people in front of the screen for that long, especially if you're talking about stuff that I talk about. I talk about how to be stress-free. You don't want to stress people off in a workshop, putting them in front of the screen for 3 hours. So, but in the offline world, yes, I've done workshops for 2 days, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, even 4-day retreats and stuff. And I believe in doing things experientially by and large. So even in the offline days, one was looking at how one could work with handouts and flip charts and get people to make notes and take stuff into them through pen and paper, because there's an energy that moves between the brain and the finger onto the paper, and that's what makes it so powerful. And you cherish your notes. They don't go into the recycle bin as easily. And now in the online world, I would make use of PowerPoints, but I usually use very few props online. Uh, I use the PowerPoint, in fact, behind me. So if I had stuff to say, I would just put a few pictures and put a few lines, words, cue words, just to keep people focused. Ultimately, the purpose of presentation material is to get the eyeballs at one place while you elaborate on it. You don't read off your slides. That's silly. So you would just find a word, and then we would be talking about it, we may be discussing it, we may be going into the depths of different people's views, or having interacted on, let's say, the word mouse and what it means to various people. And you find you work up the virtual room with stuff like that, because it takes people all the way from cheese to the computer mouse, and to books and to larders and wherever. So I would recommend that we use props online minimally. But if you have physical props, like I have a pen here, so if I would use this, I would suddenly direct your attention differently. And if I were to use it to illustrate that the power is inside you, it may be something that is more memorable, because the power is inside you. This is you, and that would work well. So if you have those physical props, it's a good thing to have.
Okay, brilliant. So you mentioned about the stress, because of course, those that are kind of biting their nails and terrified or never go on stage, or they cling to the lectern. But talking to a lot of people over the years on this, as well as seeing it, there are some seasoned professional speakers that get very nervous as well. But once they're on stage, sometimes it takes them 5 minutes. So you might let both the beginner and the experienced speaker. What tips and tricks you could share with them on that?
Where do I start? All right. So the first tip I'm going to give you is an article that I wrote, which is many speakers across the world have acclaimed it as a definitive piece on professional speaking. And it is available at sandeepnath.com/speaking. As simple as that. Just keep it simple. So sandeepnath.com/speaking, it takes you through everything that a wannabe speaker has to evaluate. There are 5 ways in which you could be speaking. And those 5 ways are how you would take the first decision of positioning yourself. Are you going to be speaking now? Those 5 are like you could be speaking to on a large scale, either to consumers directly or to businesses. And then within that, there are 3 more where it depends on how you speak. Do you speak to the business for propositioning a workshop, or do you speak directly and they pay you for the talk itself? So you move your way up based on which segment you are wanting to address, which you're comfortable to address. And then you work your way up through all of those 5, the 5th being where you're a celebrity, you're an authority in the matter. And once you have arrived at some level of speaking, then the rest of the article is about what materials you need to develop, like your website, for instance, or maybe products. Now, if you come to a stage where you are speaking for money and you just speak for free, but while you speak, there are products that you've developed at the back end which people want to buy. They could be books, they could be courses, they could be various modalities to that. But what are those modalities? So you might want to just read through those things in the article and see which ones you want to prioritize and start developing. Now, if you've already got your products, if you've already created a kind of ecosystem where things are moving and you have stuff to monetize, then it's about how you create a flywheel out of it, because you want to create a collaborative network, which is again where associations come in handy and partnerships like these come in handy, where you are leveraging an established pool of people with their own relationships and their own contacts, and they are in cognizance of your strengths, you are in cognizance of theirs, and there's a kind of cross-pollination of ideas as well as opportunities. And so you stay in circulation and in fact spiral your way up. So everybody wins. You give and you get. That's what established speakers want these days. With the way the world is moving, the playing field is really level. It's, you see, everybody can speak. That's what we're taught to do in the first 18 months of our lives. Stand up and speak. And for the next 18 years, it's about sit down and listen. But that's a different story. But when you are already speaking, it's only about whether you are getting it across. And you could be getting it across without having labeled yourself as a speaker with great experience or who's done a lot of gigs in the past. But because you were able to get into the ecosystem, and it's a virtual world and the geographies are no limitations, you could find yourself on top of the charts relatively fast, very, very fast. So I don't think there's any difference between a wannabe speaker and an established speaker. In fact, it's the established speakers who are a little more worried, because the playing field is leveled out and all of their experience is kind of down to zero, because they're also learning the virtual tricks now. And anybody can learn virtual faster than the others.
And with clients, because on your website, I know I can see your list of clients, and also you've had some prestigious clients, high caliber, that you've landed. and one, how you kind of built to that, because a lot of people, whether they're getting off, just starting, or, they're doing the freebies, what's your advice for that? Because, everybody's got their own kind. And the other thing then is, I see that you've got a lot of PR publicity from, like, you've been in different newspapers, I presume. Like, I don't know all of them, but there's a 20 plus that you've got on your website that's showing the different places that you've been. I think maybe radio, maybe TV as well. How you came about that, because that's a great way of actually getting promotions. You might tell me both of them.
Thank you, Roy, for reading through all that. I am deeply touched. Thank you so much. Well, client acquisition, since I used to be in the business world, you might recall, I used to run a consulting company before I retired from corporate world. So I did have those relationships, but that was a long time ago. I went to the Himalayas in 2010, but I did a lot of speaking because those relationships carried on. I did a lot more of B2C work in pure speaking, but that resulted in word of mouth, because even as a consultant, my strong point was word of mouth, and never really advertised consulting services. So that word of mouth and that energy carried over. But now, as I mentioned a little while ago, I'm actively looking at going back to businesses, because, like you said, stress is a concern that I'm in a crusade against stress. So I don't see the B2C segment as the segment which would really have that internal flywheel, because everybody is separate, people are independent. But when they're together in an organization, even if they might be in their Zoom silos, they are interacting. There is a need to interact, and the stress comes during interaction, during relationships, during deadlines. I want to go back to the business segment and take these nuggets of ancient oriental wisdom and how that is useful for renewing ourselves at a body, mind, spirit level, renewing our people, renewing our processes, and even renewing purpose. For that, that's what the renewalism movement is about. And for that, I'm looking at actively collaborating with people, because they're already servicing businesses with people, purpose, and process in some way or the other. And they're doing it in their own ways, or maybe they're doing other things with companies, which would be enabled through the kind of inputs that I could bring. So I'm looking at how we can collaborate and create win-win situations for my collaborator, for my message, and for the recipients, their organization, and the individuals. So that's my B2B approach as of now, which again, the collaborations are coming from talks like these, LinkedIn, the various associations, and word of mouth again. So that's I guess that's what I want to say about that.
Yeah, and with kind of the PR side, then, is there times that you kind of have to build a relationship, or is it just you can be lucky and somebody picks up on you, that you get the article or that you get on the station?
You stay in circulation. I have been featured on some of the TV shows, and I am on a very prestigious podcast, which Larry Colin brings across to the world, which happens because you're in circulation. And I write, so I write articles, and then the editors want to have conversations. So it all comes because you are doing something. And the only reason you are doing something is because you're driven by a purpose. So what's your purpose, my friend, listener, viewer? To identify that and put all your ducks in order. And then everything that you do will bring you results, because they will all go in a single line, like an arrow, straight onto target.
Brilliant, excellent. And like I've seen one of the videos that you're doing, and I thought it was good. Yeah, you had like a smile, and you had the different breakdown of the smile. If you can remember what that one was, you might let the people know, because I think it was actually very important.
Wow, you do your research, right? I love that. Yes. So that was the campaign I was running. I mean, the time I made this, it is everlasting. It's evergreen. But October last year, 10th of October is the World Mental Health Day, and as a build up to the Mental Health Day, I had this week-long campaign of smile to beat stress. Mental health gets all boshed up because of stress. And SMILE are the 5 things that you've got to remember to do. S is remember that sleep is more important than you think it is. Sleeping 6 to 8 hours a day, what it does is, and I'm taking you into ancient oriental wisdom here, it brings yin energy into your central channel. On your central channel is what science has discovered is the pineal and the pituitary gland, the thyroid and thymus, the adrenal, the gonads, the pancreas, all of them lie in the center of the body. When you energize that as you sleep, you balance your hormones and enzymes. Your endocrine system is responsible for all of that. If that's in order, you don't have mood swings, you don't have hormonal imbalances, you don't have metabolic disorders, you're not able to, you don't have problems where you're not able to digest right and stuff like that. All those enzymatic activity, everything works fine. So S for sleep, M for meditate, which is about taking very, very short breaks. I say 30 seconds, but doing it with regularity. Maybe set an alarm every hour or every couple of hours, 10 times a day. And breathe in and be aware that you're breathing. Breathe out and be aware that you're breathing out. 3 cycles, 30 seconds, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 3 cycles like that. And you will be much calmer. You will find yourself in that state of calm. And I guarantee this to you. If you do this and you hydrate yourself and you eat right, if you do these smile things, then whether it's 10 in the morning or 10 at the night, you will be at the same level of energy. So coming to the I part, I must go through this much faster than I am. I is about ingesting. So it's about hydrating and eating, but it's not just about the nourishment. Of course, eat stuff that's closest to nature as possible, not processed foods. But not just eat, but Gandhi said this, you must drink your food and chew your water. So drink your food, meaning you just pulp it to the extent that you can actually swallow it. And then gulp water as though it was, not something that you glug, 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 glug. That is ingesting, which makes it easier for the physical system to handle your energies, to handle the metabolism, and to keep you. If the stomach is good, you're always good. Most of the stresses, most of the irritation, most of the grumpiness comes because we're having a head problem or a stomach problem. And head is sleep and stomach is ingesting. And meditating puts that in order. Laughing is very useful. That's what the L is for. Laughing shakes you up, physically laughing. And that's why it's great to have good company. And it's a medicine. It shakes up your joints. We store tension in our joints. Just shake everything off your neck and everything, and the tensions leave you. So laugh. And E is exercise, which is not about going to the gym, which is about staying in a state of movement. So every hour that you set your alarm and you do this breathing and you go and get a glass of water, you do some stretching, you do some bending, you do some twisting, because if you keep your body in movement, and that is basic exercise, you will keep your energy in movement. And the whole idea is to stay energized, because if you're energized, you can't be stressed. It's only when you're stressed that you feel your spirits are down, and that's low energy. So that's the SMILE, beat stress. We're coming close to the World Mental Health Day again in October, just a few months away. And I would be very, very happy to have feedback from your listeners, Roy, if any of them have gotten into this habit of doing these 5 things. And maybe we could have a little event around the 10th of October to celebrate that. Just thinking again from the top of my head.
Why not? And the one thing with the sleep, because what I'm noticing is most people sleep with their phone next to them, which is an energy field. So I would encourage you, don't bring your phone to bed with you, because the sleep is so important and it's a distraction. And even the light at night, because people are on their phones before they go to sleep and the light is just blaring into them, and then they're wondering why they're not sleeping well. So simple little tricks will actually help you sleep so much better.
So much better. So right.
So you might finally, about your books, you've got the 2 books. You might tell people a bit about them, because obviously they've listened to you speaking about the different things. So that, you've covered a lot of stuff. So let us know what you're covering in the books.
All right, thank you. 2 books are the ones which have received international acclaim. I have another couple of them. One of them I wrote. Of the other couple, one of them I wrote as a co-author, part of the PSAI, and it's about how you pivot during the pandemic. And it was 21 authors and speakers who put their notes together. But the 2 that I have written myself, the first one is called Arrive at Success. And it's a formula for success based on the confluence of commerce and consciousness. So how can you be spiritual and wealthy at the same time? And that formula was, I'll give it away. It's NEW. Success equals N into E into W. And N is your oneness with nature. E is how you're able to empower your societal setting. And W is about being wealthy in abundance. And it's not just about money, it's the way you think. So at some level, it's also body, mind, and spirit. But that was something that I thought was, it came together very interestingly. But when I was in Mexico in 2019, November, I just had this feeling that I have to write. And there was a message that was divinely channeled to me, which found its way through 40 straight days in 240 pages. Bam, there was a book called Renewal, where it's about renewal, the NEW being the same thing, the oneness, but it is about the renewal of human consciousness and how we can renew ourselves, that's self-renewal. Then there is a set of habits. These are all about habits. So like SMILE are habits. So SMILE is a subsection of body, mind, and spirit alignment for self-renewal. But then there is another set of habits for symbiotic renewal. How do you renew your relationships? How do you renew your relationship with money, your relationship with others, your relationship with the environment, your relationship with the planet? And what is it that you can do to save the planet? And when the pandemic came in, I discovered that some of the stuff that had been written, I was just a scribe, is what we are seeing as the way out of getting infected. So being mindful about our masks, being mindful about personal hygiene, being mindful about physical distancing with people, and all of that stuff. Not that these are the habits for symbiotic renewal, but the habits for symbiotic renewal, for example, one of them is about caring for family and the kind of touch that we have to be with elders, what we get from them, what we give to them. And that just happened to become a reality because we were all working from home and family units became so important. So that's why I brought that book out a little hurriedly last year, because I said that before people regress into their old ways of doing things, they might as well get exposed to the renewal habits. And that's why the renewalism movement this year, because the pandemic isn't going away in a hurry, and we're still tending to regress. So we really need more spokespeople to understand how we can renew by what we do ourselves. and how we can even renew at a third level the systems. Like telecommuting is a system, like online schooling is a system. Now, if that had been done by design over 3-4 years, we wouldn't be so stressed. The teachers, the students, there wouldn't be a lack of bandwidth and a lack of laptops. It would have been planned that way. But we got stressed because it was forced upon us, and suddenly we had to renew. And renewal by design is way better than renewal because somebody or something has forced you into that corner. So I'm hoping to get that message across. That's my mission this decade, to get more renewalists on board, to form clubs and do stuff. And which is also why, if you're still listening, get a copy of the book
Of course
Renewal
they're listening.
for free.
They're not going to disappear.
Well, you can never tell, but I want to give you a copy of Renewal, absolutely no charge, at the site RENEWALism.com. Just click on get a copy. There's a button that says pay what you want, pay 0.00 and download it. I want you to read it. I want this message to go out to as many people as possible. Thank you, Roy, for enabling it.
No, excellent. Yeah. So how can they, what's the website so that they'll get, I mean, I'll put all the links in the description anyway, but just some people are driving and it's nice to just hear it from yourself, the best place to find everything.
RENEWALism.com.
RENEWALism.com.
SandeepNath.com, and it's got a tab on the top of Renewalism that will also take you there.
Okay, excellent. Listen, Sandeep, it's been fantastic talking to you, and I'll make sure that I'll share all the links on the podcast description as well as the video. So thank you very much.
Bless you. Bless all your listeners and viewers. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you. So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. As mentioned, we're on BitChute and YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating with a beautiful review, and share with your friends. Until next week, take care.